The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode number 34.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. Today, we're discussing Star Trek Discovery's current season and the most recent episode, Point of Light. And joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going, Dom?
Great. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, just as we like to do, remind you to like The Secrets of Star Trek on Facebook at the SQPN Facebook page. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. Leave us comments so that we can read them as feedback in the show, for example. Subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. And above all, please share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community of Star Trek fans and to reach more listeners. And if you can write a review on iTunes or other podcast directories, that's huge. That is so much help. And we are so grateful for those of you who have done that so far. So please, if you take a moment to write a review, that gets us more exposure for the podcast. So we do appreciate it. So let's get right into it. This most recent episode was called Point of Light, and it features more about Spock. That's there's an A story, a B story, and kind of a C story going on in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So the A story is more of Spock, his connection to these lights, the red lights and the red angels.
It's more search for Spock.
It's more searching for Spock. Then we have a B story, which features Tilly's ongoing issues with this apparition of a girl she knew in school, who's returned to sort of hunt her in a way,
and who's dead.
And who's dead? Yes, as we found out at the end of the previous episode. And then the C story brings us back to the Klingon homeworld, where we see,
And will they ever get hair?
Well, yes. Well, we've discovered that hair is now in the cards for them. We have L'Rell, who has become Chancellor. We have Ash Tyler, who is her right-hand man, and the struggles they have. She's having to maintain control there. So we have these three stories all in this one episode, and it's an interesting reason to think about. This is almost like a bridge episode that kind of carries the arc, as opposed to set a single story episode.
And kind of a bridge episode.
It is unusual in that it has these three stories. Normally, you get an A story and a B story in typical American television, and to have three in an episode is a bit unusual.
Right.
Well, it's a bridge story, but I would also say it's a retcon story. The retcon was strong in this episode as far as trying to explain issues of the first season that Star Trek fans screamed against,
right,
and how they're supposedly going to move to the next, or to the original series. So we'll talk about that as we go along, but there's lots of issues like that kind of floating through too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the episode begins with Burnham giving her a personal log. So this is a couple episodes now where we've started with a narration or an overview. Especially by Burnham, who is our viewpoint character, as we know, and she's talking about these seven signals and the relationship to Spock, and then we have the
track race. Yes,
and it's kind of an odd thing, and I'm just so it's the command training programs. They're having a half marathon through the corridors of the ship, the passageways. And
so 13 miles of running through corridors. That's a lot even for Doctor Who.
Yes, it would be. Yes. And I'm kind of struggling with this whole command training program thing, because Tilly is so concerned about becoming a captain, whereas last season she was a cadet and she just became an ensign. And I'm thinking how does this command training program work? Is this it's almost like a corporate training program as opposed to a military.
I was gonna say the parallel that I could think of is in the military. You often have, when you reach a certain rank, you have a class you have to go to. For enlisted, you'll have like the NCO training school in the Air Force,
right? Where
when you hit, senior airman, staff sergeant, you'll go to this course to learn then what you need to do to be a supervisor. You know, what you need to do to have airmen underneath you and what that means to be an NCO. That's the only thing I could think of as a parallel. And officers have equivalent of that too, but usually, again, thinking in the Air Force, the modern day Air Force, it's usually about the rank of captain and major,
right?
Which is, two ranks up from second lieutenant ensign, which are equivalent ranks. So it's kind of weird that she would be doing that after getting right out of the academy.
I assume that it's related to what we know from the original series are kind of the different major departments. Like in the 23rd century, science is going to be so massive that if you're going to be a science specialist, if you're going to wear a blue shirt, whether it's medical or astrophysics or whatever it may be, there's going to be so much for you to know that you're really not going to be on the command path. You might sub in temporarily, like if you are Mr. Spock or something, but you're really committed to learning all of this massive amounts of science that applies to different planets. And so I think, and same thing for engineering. I mean, these are phenomenally, complex pieces of technology they're flying around in. And so I think you may just have to, and this is just head canon, but you may have to choose early on which path you're going to pursue. And so, and command may actually involve a huge amount of learning as well, because as we learned from Galaxy Quest, there's not a commander who doesn't know every bolt and rivet of their starship.
That's right.
So, there's enough there that I can kind of imagine this, but I agree. This is kind of way early in her career to be taking training specifically aimed at getting you into a commander or captain slot, which they do indicate in this episode is the goal. It's not, this is just for future captains. It's for future captains and commanders.
And I could see it if it was stated as something like, this is what you need to go through to be a bridge officer, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be a helmsman, if you're going to be even communications on the bridge, you have to go through command training, because there theoretically could be a situation where the captain, the first officer, the second officer, and so on are indisposed, and you're it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want the ship's counselor having to run things.
We've seen that happen. Or the ship's doctor once or twice. Yes. And I could see, remember in Voyager, Janeway was a science officer who moved over to command. And I could see someone like that going through a command training program as they're moving from one specialty to another. So I could see that too.
And we even saw Dr. Crusher, take a command program.
Right. The problem I have is, because I don't want to just get it too much into the weeds and retconning, but the problem dramatically I have is that it creates this tension in Tilly. Like, if I mess up this thing right now, I will never become a captain, and it's like, it just seems, it's hard to take. It's hard to believe.
And that could be a character defect. That we've known people like that. I've known people who, guys who are priests today, and some who aren't anymore, who they had to get all A's at seminary. Getting a B at seminary. Well, you know what you call a priest who had an average of a B grade? Father. A
priest, yes.
You know what you call a priest who had an average of an A grade at seminary? Father.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But they had to get that A grade. They had to have that. There are people that they're just driven like that.
And there are also people who, like Tilly, are just insecure and are afraid every mistake is going to be fatal. And I like the fact that they have Saru kind of walk her back on that.
Right.
It's like, you don't have that much pressure. I got your back here.
I like Saru as Tilly's mentor. I really am enjoying that addition to his character in this season. It makes him more than just, oh, that scared guy running things. He was a little one-dimensional.
It's been a way they've really been able to develop his character where he's been able to grow past that.
I think every character has had development beyond what they were last season in positive ways. Every character has developed.
Except that transhuman person on the bridge.
The
totally,
cyborg?
the one you never see any of her actual skin.
The one with the helmet on, or the one who's okay, the one with the helmet. Yes, yeah. I do want to get that person's story someday, some Lower Decks episode where we find out about that one. So while Tilly's running, she sees the ghostly May and
taunting her.
Right. It's very interesting. Of course, like this is not a Star Trek problem. This is a TV problem. Tilly stops running, talks with this person for minutes at a time, and then starts running again, and then not only catches everybody else, passes them to win. Now,
beats her own best time.
Yes, and
exactly.
This is, if you could see me, I am not fat shaming or fitness shaming anyone. But this actress is obviously not as in running shape as the other actors who are running. I could not run as fast as even she does. But
she's
nevertheless,
just from a high gravity world or something.
let's go with
She's
that.
From Earth.
She's from Earth. I just thought that was kind of funny how they always have no matter how long they stop and talk, they always catch up, and in this case, she won the race.
Oh yeah.
So that sort of sets the stage for the dramatic tension in this episode for Tilly. Is we're going to have this confrontation over this character, this ghostly person who's hunting her, and then we shift to the arrival of Sarek's ship. Pike says, "Oh, I had to let Starfleet Command know about the connection between Spock and the Seven Signals." And because Sarek is leading up a task force with the Federation, he's probably coming to talk about it. Turns out it's not Sarek at all. It's Amanda. And
she's being secretive.
Yes, she whispers, "Please don't react. Spock needs our help. I could only turn to you." I'm like, why are you whispering? Why can't you?
That's not going to get picked up by the microphones,
or even just like, why is that a secret? Spock needs our help. I could only turn to you. Okay, let's talk about it.
Can't have that random unnamed officer who's running the transporter that you only see when he's actually standing at the transporter console. Can't have him hear it.
That's right. I have to say that the actress who plays Amanda, Mia Kirshner, looks like she could be the same age as Michael Burnham. I mean, she looks really young. In the future, everyone lives long and looks good.
Really, really good skin cream on Vulcan.
She's taken that live long and prosper thing to the logical extreme. And then we switch to the Klingons. The Klingons are back. L'Rell is addressing the Klingon High Council. She's got Ash/Volk still looking human, by the way.
Looking better as a human, too. He's got this kind of samurai thing going now with a man bun.
And the beard. But the beard, though, as we all know, the addition of a beard improves everything, including the whole show. And so I like that they're showing the future iconic D7 battlecruiser, which will be the basis of the new unified Klingon fleet, which I'm like, I just love the introduction of these, as you were saying earlier, Father Gory, the retconning. This was the first what I would call the instance of retconning, where all those ships that were different that we didn't recognize, that's because those were built by the houses, right? And
they did them on their own. But now we're gonna have this unified one that just happens to look exactly like the one that everybody thinks of as the original series Klingon ship,
right? Yeah, and I'm glad to see it.
And why we don't have the houses stressed in the original series, because they've been unified. They're an integrated service now.
Exactly.
Yep.
So
I have to say, as well, we're talking about hair. So the apparent explanation is that the Klingons didn't have hair last season because it was wartime, and for some reason they shaved off their hair. But now that the war is over, they're growing it back. And on some of them, it looks great. On L'Rell, though, that style just isn't working for her.
It looks really like overly fake. Like, it is fake, obviously. It looks really fake. And a couple of things come up in this. So one, L'Rell is talking about uniting the various Klingon cultures into one. And this is actually, I really appreciate this because this has been a criticism of a lot of science fiction, which is every time people from Earth go out into space and visit another planet, that planet has one culture and one
like
climate. But and one climate. So this is a jungle planet and this is a snow planet, and our planet has all those things plus more. And our planet has hundreds of thousands of cultures, not just one. Even today, or maybe even in the future, we'll have differences. And so this acknowledges that the Klingons have separate cultures with different cultural expressions, and L'Rell is specifically trying to unite them into a single culture that's Klingon, and which will explain why the Klingons are a monoculture in the future.
Yeah, what I find hard to process, though, is, and this is true of the first season as well, is why are they so threatened as Klingons, as a culture?
Right.
Because they haven't been like kicked around and lost a bunch of wars or anything. I mean, that's the situation. If you're economically disadvantaged, or if you're culturally disadvantaged, or if you're militarily disadvantaged, that's when a culture starts to get skittish about its identity. And it's like, we need to protect our identity. But we haven't. But there has to be some kind of massive disadvantage to induce that kind of fearfulness about your own culture. And we haven't seen any evidence of the Klingons experiencing the kind of massive disadvantage that would have motivated T'Kuvma and Vok and L'Rell and so forth.
I mean, it is part of the Klingon psyche that goes back to their very origins, that they always see themselves as, us against the world, or the universe in this case. We have to fight everyone we encounter in order to dominate them. There's this sort of this cultural species attitude that they have to be the preeminent warrior. They have this alpha male thing to the extreme, and I think that sort of motivates them when they encounter someone different. It's not who are you? Let's get to know each other. It's attack, conquer, and then we can figure it out.
But if that was, I think this is a flaw in the writing, because if that was the issue, they would be saying things like, we must claim our rightful place in the galaxy. We need to show these other Federation people, that we're the alphas here.
Right.
And they're not. They're saying, we need to protect ourselves lest we be destroyed and assimilated by the Federation. And that's a completely different message and a different place psychologically.
Right. They could do a better job of of them explaining, look, we saw the Vulcans become part of it, and then the Andorians and all these, every time the Federation encounters a new world, they absorb it, and that world loses its identity, which, whether it does or not, that could be their viewpoint. But you're right. They have to kind of say it. You can't just assume we're going to figure that out, that's what they mean. So I agree. I see that. Because one thing they do here is they see the red lights, these red signals. Their viewpoint on them is that they are omens about their loss in the world, about having lost the war. And so they see the sort of as a motivator, or at least L'Rell uses it as a motivator to unify.
So they just needed 23rd century St. Augustine to write the new City of God in Space and explain that the gods really haven't deserted everybody. They were never there.
Right. Well, the Klingons famously killed their gods, right? That's so
they have even less excuse. Who's sending the omens?
Exactly. Right. So the question comes up then, why is Ash still Ash? Why has he not been returned to the way he was as Vok, as a Klingon? Why does he still look human? Because this is a big plot point. The other Klingons see him as this human interloper, this human influence on the Chancellor, and they distrust her because of him. So why is he still a human? And
this was suicidally foolish of them. I mean, we see how it gets dealt with in this episode, but there is no way that Ash Tyler is going to be able to serve as L'Rell's right-hand man in a post-war Klingon culture and not get killed. He just could not survive for any period of time in that position.
Right.
Well, and they kind of explain it where because Ash Tyler's personality was put over Vokes was basically wiped out.
Okay.
Vogue no longer exists.
Little fragments of Vogue, and they, for some reason, they don't have the technology to medically undo this, I think was the indication we got at the end of last season.
That's the problem I have is like, why? Like, I mean, you went one direction, you can't go in the other or whatever. Or at least to give him the appearance, like maybe not make him Vogue again, but give him head ridges or whatever, just to make him at least look.
That they could certainly do. Although there is precedent. Arn Darvin never went back to looking Klingon.
Right.
Even in the 24th century, he was still human looking.
And they didn't even have head ridges then.
Yeah.
That's true. I do like the fact that this has precedent in the original series, this idea of the Klingon who looks human. So for all the fans who are complaining about this, there is precedent for it.
Also, wow, does Ash Tyler really know how to sabotage his relationship with L'Rell? I mean, telling her, it feels like the Ash part of me feels like it's being violated when you touch me. It's like, okay, you're going to be sleeping on the couch for a long time if she doesn't knife you herself.
Right.
Yeah.
Although if she were a Klingon woman, like we've seen Klingon women before in Star Trek, she doesn't act like it. You know what I mean? There's the Klingon women we've seen before are much more assertive and aggressive, and you know,
she's more vulnerable.
She is. I don't know if that's intentional for this particular character or just they've changed Klingons.
She just doesn't happen to be the Duras sisters.
Yeah. Or what was Alexander's mother?
Now it's gone out of my head. Starts with a B.
Yeah.
But she was half Klingon. So.
Half Klingon.
Yeah.
And she didn't particularly like the Klingon part of herself. Kind of like Lana Torres.
Right.
Yep.
The Duras sisters are way slimier, though. And,
yes.
And I kind of like having a Klingon woman who's full Klingon and not slimy.
There was the
kind of like Grilka. She was not particularly slimy.
Which was Grilka the one
that was the one with Quark.
That's the one I was going to say. The one that Quark. I think I look at her as she's not half human. She's a regular Klingon woman, and she's not slimy like the Duras sisters. She would be the example to follow.
Kalar was Alexander's mother.
Thank you. So we switch back to the Discovery. I keep wanting to say Enterprise. We're all going to do this throughout the entire series. We're going to call it the Discovery Enterprise. We switch back to the Discovery where Pike, we're starting to see this personality of Pike's that is different from all the other captains in some ways. Pike is the Boy Scout. He does not break the rules. And so he refuses to. So Amanda stole Spock's medical file and brought it to Michael, asking her to decrypt it. Michael refuses and takes it to Pike. And Pike at first refuses, and he says, "My mother wouldn't like it if I broke the rules," which is that's a key character insight into Pike, and I like this different kind of captain.
He's
kind of down to earth, and
he's doing it as kind of a joke. He's not really that much of a mama's boy,
right?
But it's like he's saying, "Look, this is against my principles; that they're very deeply held."
Right. And I like this aspect of Pike, and I think it creates interesting drama, especially as we go forward, especially with Burnham, who in the past has been able to, play a little fast and loose with the rules at times, as we know.
And she comments on that, and it's an indication of how she's changed as a character.
Yes. Yep. And it also makes him different from Kirk, who did what he needed to do when he wanted to do it, that sort of thing. So, but they find out in the file that Spock is wanted for murder.
Before then, they contact. So before agreeing to decrypt the file, Pike contacts Spock, the head of the facility of Starbase 5, where Spock is being held, and says, "Can you give me an update?" And it's like, "Sorry, I can't." And it's like, "What are you talking about? I'm his commanding officer. I'm entitled to an update." And the guy's like, "Well, he's not here anymore. He killed 3 of his doctors and then escaped."
Right.
And this is what convinces Pike that something weird is going on here. They also know that some of Spock's files are missing, although I don't know why they would, because all you have to do is copy them to a thumb drive, even if they're encrypted.
You got to remember, this is Federation computers where you can't have like a duplicate of a hologram. You know, if you copy the hologram from one ship to the other, the hologram disappears from the original and things like that.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, anyway, so as soon as they're off the phone with Starfleet, and also they note that some people like Pike do prefer communicating on screens to using holograms. So there's another bit of retconning for Father. As soon as they're off the phone, all three of them, Amanda, Michael, and Pike, instantly say, this guy's not telling us the whole truth. Spock would not do this. And so that's what pushes him over to say, go ahead and decrypt this thing, because we're not getting the real story.
Right. On the copying the file, there actually are computer systems today, government computer systems, that can tell when something's been copied. So, yeah. But
I guess the difference between copying and missing, though.
Yeah, missing.
I would assume this is like some uncopyable disk or something like, and so the only way to get the file is take the disk.
Yeah, that just seems silly for medical records, but yes.
Yeah.
So the what they discover in the record is that Spock is suffering from an abnormal extreme empathy deficit.
And as soon as they said that, I thought he's become a psychopath. And then they make that explicit. Amanda points out that extreme empathy deficit is medical code for psychopathy.
Yes. So has Spock gone
what
crazy?
Serial killers have.
Right. Yep. Right. And this goes directly to Burnham, because she feels like that she had been brought into the family to help Spock learn empathy. Sarek had told her that previously. And Amanda talks about she tried not to confuse Spock growing up. Spock was, Sarek is the unemotional Vulcan, and so Amanda denied Spock her outward displays of love so that he could grow up in the Vulcan way, which, as we know, as humans, as human beings, that's how you create psychopaths, by denying them motherly love. And Spock being half human, apparently that affected him in that way. Apparently, and that's the question. So
well, and then there was the issue of brought up of Burnham, what she did, and of course this is one of my pet peeves of writing. Is I call it the Dan Brown method of suspense. You ask a question and you don't answer it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you put off the answer till later.
It's
to some key point in the plot. Yeah. And that's what happened here is Burnham clams up every time, says, well, it was my fault. What did you do? She clams up.
Right. Just say it. Yeah. So which she eventually does. But
so in this conversation, after they open up the file, they find all these images of the Red Angel.
Yep.
And so Amanda reveals to Michael, because they both recognize the Red Angel, Amanda reveals to Michael that the Red Angel drawings were made by Spock and that he had seen the Red Angel as a child. Apparently, at some point, the family was under threat by logic extremists because of Sarek's dalliance with humans.
Right.
And Michael became the focus of that. Apparently, the logic extremists were even responsible for the deaths of her parents, if I understood correctly. And so she takes off, runs away from home. And on that night, the Red Angel appeared to Spock and told Spock where Michael had gone. And Michael doesn't know anything about this because Sarek and Amanda assumed that Spock had used logic to figure out where she was, knowing things like what time she left, how fast she was walking, stuff like that. And so they thought that he had just imagined this Red Angel business. Well, now with the red signals, it turns out, no, there really is this Red Angel entity, and it's had a profound effect on the lives of both Spock and Michael.
Right.
And my thought was, well, at least the Red Angel, even though the children are leading here, at least the Red Angel isn't Melvin Belli.
Yes, that's a callback to an original series episode. Yes. So, one of the things that comes up here, and this is a fundamental Star Trek question, which is just because you're half of a particular species Does that mean
as
if, right? Does that mean that you must have the attributes of that species? This is the B'Elanna Torres question, the Saavik question, the Spock question. So because Spock is half human, does that mean he must have human emotions? Is that how it works? Now, obviously, we don't have a real world an analog to this because we don't have cross species sentient. Well, I was going to say sentient, cross species because we only know of one. But does this make sense to you? This is sort of a fundamental Star Trek question. I mean, this idea that being half species of something gives you certain undeniable personality qualities or mental qualities.
So the idea, I assume every character that we see who's a interstellar half-breed on this show their parents had to have massive genetic engineering to make this possible.
Right.
If it was even possible at all. Because in real life, there's no way you're crossing two different species from two different planets.
Right.
But if you could do that based on the parallels we have on Earth, where you have very similar things like lions and tigers that can breed, then you do end up getting a liger or a tigon, which does display both characteristics of a lion and a tiger. I would assume with Mendelian genetics that it would, for the most part, kind of give you a bell curve where you have about a quarter of the offspring are very much like one race, a quarter of the offspring are very much like the other race, and the middle 50% of the offspring will be a kind of a blend of both races, assuming there are no super dominant genes involved from one of the races. So you'd have some largely human Vulcan hybrids, largely Vulcan human Vulcan hybrids, and then mid-range human Vulcan hybrids, which would be the most common.
Okay. Right. Father Corey, you have any?
Well, I was just saying. I mean, that's always been a kind of a trope of fantasy as well. Of you have groups like half elves where they're half human, half elves,
right?
And a lot of times, again, when you do like role playing or something like that, they will have traits of either. So it's the same principle, kind of like Jimmy says, is you will pull traits from either race, either species, but you probably won't have all of them. It's not like like you'll have all the Vulcan traits and all the human traits, and they're kind of mashed together. There will be some pick and choose, so to speak.
An example from the drumhead in Next Generation time was that younger crewman who was like a quarter Romulan, and he had lied to get into Starfleet, said he had a Vulcan grandfather when really it was a Romulan grandfather. And he was largely human, but he had a little bit of point to his ears and stuff like that.
Right, right. I mean, I suppose from their point of view in the story is that Spock would have been they would have assumed at first that he was that 25% that was mostly Vulcan and exhibited mostly Vulcan mental and physical traits. But now it's appearing that there are more human aspects that are coming out.
Maybe I assume Spock's still a 50%er in terms of his traits, and he's just trained himself to act more Vulcan.
Right. I suppose we did have a discussion last time where we talked about Spock's emotional reactions in The Cage, the pilot episode that then became the Menagerie. And I had said, oh, well, Spock addressed that with McCoy. And Jimmy, you asked me about that after we recorded it, because you looked and it's not in that episode. And now I have to kind of backtrack a little bit on that, because I could swear that I remember some dialogue or a conversation between Spock and McCoy about his emotional reaction in the events of the Cage of the original pilot, where he's delighted at the blue tingling
Chinese money plant.
Yes, and Chinese money plant, right? I have to admit there could be something I read in a book, a Star Trek book, a novel, because I've read dozens and dozens of those, and it could be in those. It could be a false memory that's influenced partly by Spock's reaction in Amok Time when he's joyful at Kirk not being dead, and McCoy calling him on that. So that could be that too. So I just wanted to kind of point it out here. And so if a listener knows, if they know what I'm remembering, let me know, because I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah. And certainly in novelizations and things like that, it's common to retcon things that don't quite make sense. And it could, like, that happens all the time in Doctor Who novels. I assume it happens in Star Trek novels too,
Yes.
where, well, wouldn't McCoy have pointed this out? He was sitting right there in the courtroom when they played the Chinese money plant sequence.
Right, exactly.
It would be natural for him to rib Spock about that. And
Yes.
then the logical explanation is, well, at that time I was experimenting more with my humanity.
Right. So this scene ends with Michael being called away because she got a message, and it's Ash calling her to warn her about L'Rell's troubles and the impact it might have on the Federation. And I'm thinking, are there no other diplomatic connections? Like, does he have to call her to relay this to the Federation Diplomatic Corps, the Federation Council, or whatever? It just seemed kind of
because then you get that split scene where they're both standing in their various sets and looking at each other via hologram.
Yeah, it feels contrived, but okay. So he passes on the warning, which this presumably is why we get the ending that we do.
So here's a headcanon for why he wouldn't just call the Federation embassy on Kronos. That call's going to be tracked and it's going to be decoded. And word is going to get back to the. I mean, anytime anybody calls an embassy, the local intelligence is going to be services are going to be all over that.
Well,
and they're going to be reporting it to people who you may not want to know about it. He's even not telling L'Rell he's doing this.
Yeah.
So he doesn't want anybody to know. Making a personal call would make sense in that kind of situation because it's less likely to be monitored.
That's true. And in fact, he has good reason to be to worry about being bugged because he is bugged.
He is.
The paint that he can't, the face paint that he rubbed off of the bad guy, General
Call Shaw.
General Call Shaw.
Of House Core. So he's like related to Commander Core, who we'll meet in 10 years' time.
Yes. So he...
By the way, I assume that paint was like a mark of his house that he was defiantly wearing, and that's why they wanted him to take it off.
Right. That's where that whole, like, we are one culture now thing, and your culture wears that paint, and we don't do that now.
And that was another retcon why some of them had face paint.
Yes.
In the previous season, because that was their markings of their house.
Right. And throughout this episode, we saw Tyler trying to get it off his hands. Out, damn Spot, as we should.
I know. I kept thinking of that.
Turns out it was a very persistent listening bug on his hands. I have to say that was a clever little techno babble on that. That was good. I like that.
Yeah, because in the future, bugging would be fantastically easy with microscopic devices.
Yes. Oh yes. And then we go back to the Enterprise where. The command training program,
shadow exercises. Ooh.
Yes. So this is how you make a puppy, and this is how you make a dancing dog.
It's basically take your cadet to work day.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, Tilly ends up with Captain Pike, because why not, right? She did win a Medal of Honor as a cadet, so maybe they have high hopes for her. But she's already Tilly, which means she's nervous and edgy. Now she's extra edgy because of May.
May is freaking out.
And she does the freak out. She kind of loses it in front of everyone. And instead of telling everyone what's going on, because now they really think she's crazy, just tell everyone. That's the thing. I just yell at the screen. It's like, this is Star Trek. This sort of thing happens. Tell them about it.
I like how so May is like totally the thing that tips Tilly over the edge is May is freaking out. It's like, where is the real captain? This is not him. The real captain is much whiter, and I'm going, are you sure? Pike is pretty white. But no, they do have someone in the wings who's even whiter than Pike.
Blonde hair and white.
And shorter.
He's almost the human Vogue. He's like almost an albino.
Yes, that the actor is pretty pale. And yes, because Tilly first thinks that she's talking about Lorca, which obviously not the case. And so Tilly just has a breakdown. She loses it and rushes off the bridge. And that's that for now. And then we're back to Kronos. Like, hello, Whiplash. Where Tyler discovers. Let's just skip to the point. Tyler discovers that he and L'Rell had a baby. And there's this little Klingon infant lying in a crater that he runs into, and that changes everything for both for him, but also for the Empire, because it introduces a vulnerability.
So L'Rell didn't know about this because she found out she was pregnant after his conversion to human began, and she couldn't lead the Empire while being pregnant, so she had the baby transferred to an artificial womb, and it was born from an artificial womb. Also,
it's never met the baby.
Right, she's never met it. She's had it under the care of her uncle. And that's why that explains earlier in the episode, Ash is like, why does your uncle not like me? And she's, no, he believes in you. Well, why is he keeping secrets from me? Well, this is the secret he's been keeping.
Right.
And so so the baby also is an albino, like Voq. And L'Rell views it as a liability, which is kind of cold-blooded.
On the other hand,
but true, I guess, in Klingon society.
On the other hand, apparently, I don't want to get into a long political discussion, but the idea of abortion never comes up. Like, she never talked, that this inconvenient pregnancy, et cetera, she did not. It didn't come up even in the discussion. Well, did you think of getting rid of the baby? No, it never came up. And so that's a very interesting aspect.
It is surprising. I mean, Gene Roddenberry, despite his various views on sexuality, was pro-life, and that's good. But I don't think they're honoring him here. I think the reason is that if she had had an abortion, there would be no drama.
Right.
This is a plot point. What I found interesting is and this is something you see not just in modern Star Trek, but with the deconstruction of family values that we've had massively across popular media culture in the last number of years. The one that's still kind of there is you have to suck it up for the sake of your children. Right. And so even though Ash has just massively damaged his relationship with L'Rell by sharing his secret cootie feelings about her, he immediately sucks it up for the sake of the child and recommits to L'Rell, even though he just had a flirty scene with Michael Burnham. Right. And they were clearly interested in each other. It's like, okay, no, I'm committing to you now. We have a baby. And that's admirable. It's a little surprising because, you could just adopt. There are other, even if Klingons don't practice infanticide, which one would be surprised if they didn't, given their warrior culture nature. You could have the baby adopted. You don't have to recommit in this situation, but you do because that's the dramatically, emotionally satisfying right thing to do. But I found myself wondering, how, Hollywood has taken the lead on deconstructing family values. How long till they deconstruct that one? In 10 years' time, are we going to be seeing? Because originally you had stories like on Maude back in the 1970s, where Maude has an abortion, and that's the drama, and it's the big triumphant thing. Right. And are we going to see similar stuff with parents one day turning their backs on their children? Because why not? I mean, why preserve this one if you're smashing all the rest?
It's already begun. I mean, I can remember a few times watching either a movie or a TV show where a parent says, I have to be true to myself, and abandons their family and their kids. Right. Although even then, it's still, I'm just trying to remember the examples I'm thinking of. It's still seen as partially a bad thing. I mean, it's just you've abandoned, but maybe how long before it's seen as a good thing?
The triumph,
right? Yeah, that's true. Well, L'Rell thinks that Tyler is going to leave someday. He's going to leave to return to a human life. He's a human now, and he's not going to want to stick around. He's going to want to go back to Burnham because he's been calling his ex-girlfriend. That's a bad sign.
On the force phone,
that's a bad sign. When he's calling the ex-girlfriend, and you've got more in common with her now. I can hear the argument already. So but like you said, he recommits to her. And so we're back to, we go back to Discovery, and we get, let's see, so this is when we had the Logic Extremist thing.
Yeah, and at this point, Michael reveals that, so Amanda says that there was a moment after the Red Angel incident where she could just sense all of Spock's openness starting to drain away.
Right.
And Michael says, that was me.
Yes.
I knew I had to hurt Spock in order to protect him from the Logic Extremists. I had to push him away from me. And so I did something, which I'm not going to tell you in this episode, where I hurt him, and that pushed him away. And that's what caused him to close in on himself and become much less emotional. And when Amanda learns this, and when Michael won't tell her what she did, she kisses Michael. And, well, Michael says, despite the fact I did this to him and he's never returned any of my phone calls since then, I will find him. And Amanda kisses her and says, no, I will, and walks off.
That was interesting.
That was a very interesting moment. It's like, okay, you're trying to show you still care for Michael, but there is an snap in this that is really serious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was an effective, dramatic moment. I still love you. You're still my child, but I'm really mad at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was effective. All right. So at this point in the third act of the show, we're jumping back and forth. Klingon, Burnham and Amanda, Tilly. So now we snap back to Kronos. And we have, this is when L'Rell and Tyler are now going together to see their baby, because L'Rell has, like I said, had never seen her baby before. And when they get there, they find her uncle, who's been guardian of the baby, dead, hanging from the ceiling,
strung up.
Yes, in Klingon fashion. And now this is when Kolsha contacts him via hologram, holding the baby, and says, you get the baby back, but you have to give me control of the Empire, basically.
Yeah.
And so he's gonna tell them, where to meet, and that's where we're going to sign the papers over, sign the Empire over to me.
And so then they have a big battle of two people, L'Rell and Ash, against I don't know how many Klingons, and they win.
Right.
I assume this is the kind of battle that occurs on Game of Thrones, though I've never seen Game of Thrones. And
we've seen this in Star Trek too, though. We would have the big Klingon battles where you have the hero Klingon standing up against all the peon Klingons.
I thought of that because in watching it, I mean, they're using these bladed weapons and to do all this, and they're doing it with this kind of Lord of the Rings vibe. It's with the architecture and the art stylings on the bat'leths and stuff.
Right. The bat'leth and mek'leth have been redesigned, I have to say. Very interesting. They have a much more organic design than the previous designs. The previous ones were very industrial, angular. In keeping with the new Klingon aesthetic, it's very organic and flowing in the design. I'm not sure. I mean, some people are really into this sort of design stuff. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Doesn't really matter to me, I guess. But I thought it was interesting. One of the other things that struck me is they animated in, special effects of all this Klingon purple blood flying everywhere.
Oh yeah,
it looked very fake. I'm sorry.
Lot more blood than traditional Klingon fights. That's for sure.
Yes, apart from the what was Star Trek 6, the one where Spock and
Undiscovered Country,
Country, right? That's where the last time we saw a lot of Klingon blood flowing around in purple blood
in null gravity.
Yes, yes, that was very interesting.
So despite them winning, Call pulls out a paralysis device that paralyzes Ash and L'Rell, and then he forces L'Rell's thumbprint using Ash's blood onto a contract to turn the Empire over to him. And he's about to slit Ash's throat when suddenly a Klingon woman steps out of the shadows and kills him, and then sucks the paralysis energy out of both of them and reveals herself to be Philippa Georgiou. who Ash immediately recognizes and addresses as Emperor. And she says, I think you must have me confused with someone else. I'm just Philippa Georgiou,
right,
former commander of the Shinzo. And
security consultant for the Federation now. That's She's got a consulting gig now, which is interesting.
It's a gig economy.
That's right. And she tells L'Rell that Tyler and the boy are liabilities to her.
Also, she uses this floaty bubble thing to incapacitate Cole.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And then which allows L'Rell to execute him in Klingon style, which I thought was very very nice of Georgiou to let L'Rell have her Klingon revenge, I suppose.
Well, and she, L'Rell did threaten, or Tyler, I think, was threatened that Kolshaw's, no, it was L'Rell, excuse me. L'Rell threatened that his entrails would be spilled on the floor, and that last scene of him was with the entrails spilled on the floor.
Yes, this is not your father's. This is not your father's Star Trek anymore. No. So I'd
like to live just long enough to see your head put on a pike. I would wave at your lifeless eyes.
Yeah.
So Georgiou dismisses Tyler and pulls L'Rell aside and basically tells her, look, if you don't do something about both Tyler and the boy, their liabilities and weaknesses, you need to do something about it. And if you don't, I will. Because I don't care what you want. What the Federation wants is for a stable empire on our border. And that's why we need you to be strong, which is a very interesting realpolitik sort of approach to this situation. And we're also left with the impression, for dramatic purposes, that this was a threat on the life of both Tyler and the baby.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the fact that they're now dealing with this would never work. You know, and you have Georgiou being the one to hang a lantern on it and just say, look, guys, this is never going to work. You gotta get him out of here.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we'll come back to the resolution of that, because I want to deal with the Tilly situation, which is
first though, we learned in this scene that Georgiou had children in the mirror universe who she then was like a bad mother to, because she let other people raise them so she could get on with being Empress.
Well, wasn't Michael her daughter in the mirror universe adopted?
But this seemed to imply, or I got the impression, number one, it was plural children, not just Michael.
That's true.
And I assumed that that at least some of them were biological.
Okay. It's, I guess I didn't think about that too hard. But yeah, you're right. So we back to Discovery, and so Burnham is in her stateroom that she shares with Tilly, that apparently still shares with her, even though she's the science officer now, and she's been redeemed and elevated in rank again. But apparently she's sharing her stateroom with Tilly, and
they become friends, and they have become friends. They've shown that.
Mm-hmm. They're roomies, and Tilly comes in, and Burnham is crying. And it decides I need to focus on something other than my own pain. Let me help you. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that Burnham hears what's going on and immediately cuts through the baloney and says, "You're not crazy. This is Star Trek. You're seeing some sort of alien influence. That's the thing that all of us have been yelling at the screen for the last 2 episodes.
Exactly,
it's some sort of alien influence."
And I like how Tilly admits to her that she says, she's been grooming me for something, and I don't know what. And it's like, oh, that is so creepy.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the trigger that really makes them wonder is that May doesn't understand why Tilly's eyes are leaking or dripping or something. Yeah. Yep. And so Burnham says, show me a teenage girl who's never cried. You can't, because I'm a xenoanthropologist. And I'm like, not because you were a teenage girl once.
Yeah.
I mean, at the beginning of this,
I think that line was meant to be humorous, and it just fell flat.
Yeah. Well, especially since the beginning of the scene, she was crying.
Yeah.
I thought it was okay. However, what I really liked about this scene is how genuinely vulnerable and tearful we get to see Tilly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. This didn't come across as fake acting. This is like, I thought her acting was good.
Yes.
She really is coming across as a frightened and scared and, just damaged emotionally in this scene. And I think it's another indication of why she's not the Mary Sue on this series.
Right. And so because it shows she's still a brand new ensign who just was a cadet. There's a lot to take in for her all at once. And so they figure out that because she touched the dark matter asteroid.
That's when May started appearing to her.
Right. But even though Burnham touched it, it didn't affect her. But they figure out it was the spores. And so Tilly doesn't need sickbay. She needs Stamets. And that's when they go to Stamets. And
he is whiter than Pike.
He's whiter than Volk.
And meaner.
He is whiter than Volk.
And so and Saru is there to reassure Tilly that even though she kind of freaked out, they'll explain, what's going on. Although one thing he says is, Pike will understand. He has a sense of humor and he's fond of you. Or he'll recognize that she was under the influence of an alien creature.
Exactly.
Yeah. That seemed a little odd. So Stamets uses a device. It looks like the same device that Tilly was using on the dark matter asteroid.
It is.
Yeah.
To suck it out of her, which is basically.
I love how May starts to try to bargain and threaten and stuff like that. And then Tilly says, "How soon can you get this thing out of me?" And Stamets just whips out the device and goes to town with it.
This might hurt.
This might hurt a little. Oh, were you a dentist once?
It's like, don't get any anesthetic ahead of time either. No warning. Just turn on the device. Out the thing comes. And we finally get closure on the green dot from the series finale last season, where we saw a green dot land on Tilly's shoulder. We didn't know what it was. Now we do. It was this mycelial spore creature
from the mirror universe.
Yep,
that has been manifesting as May.
Right. I wish Stamets would have said you're going to feel a little pressure, because that's the classic. It's not pain. It's not going to hurt a little. You're going to feel a little pressure, a little pinch.
Yep.
So at one point he says it's obviously multicellular since it has opinions. That was a good line. So, and even though they're supposed to have inoculations against spores, because it was a mirror universe spore, that she was not inoculated against it, etc., etc. They suck it out. It floats around, and then they suck it up into the.
They put it in a shield.
Yeah, my guess is we're not done with this creature yet.
No, not according to the clip for next week.
Oh, that's right. That's better than a guess.
Yeah.
The previews tell us.
So in terms of things we might not be done with, so we have here with May a mycelial spore alien appearing to someone as in the guise of a dead person they knew. Mm-hmm. Do we know anyone else who's been hooked up to the mycelial network and having dead loved ones appear to them?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder who that could be.
So Stamets may have an interesting revelation coming his way. If he finds out that Hugh is not Hugh, it's just a spore alien.
Right. Now, this brings us to a scene which I found extremely disturbing. This is about as far as Star Trek has ever gone for me into the disturbing realm, which is L'Rell addressing the High Council, where she's disavowing Tyler, shows his severed head, which is, that's far, and then shows the severed head of her baby. And we know, we probably figure, this is not really the baby, but nevertheless, I mean, it's obviously a special effect prop thing, but that's dark for Star Trek. That is as dark as it's ever gotten.
They ease us into it a step at a time in terms of the direction of this scene. First, they show us Ash's head, and that gives us time to adjust to what's coming. And then they don't show us the complete baby's head at first.
Right.
They show her holding it up, but we only see part of it in several different shots from different angles before we get to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, they know consciously we're really going somewhere where Star Trek has not gone before. And we're walking you over the line a piece at a time to try to soften the blow.
Okay. Yeah. So that was hard to watch as a as a dad, but I'm sure for a lot of people that was hard to watch. But she takes this moment to unite the Empire. She's using this opportunity, unites the Empire behind her. Kind of says, I will never be a mother before, so now I will take the title. I will be your mother, the mother of the Empire.
Well, I love how
go ahead.
I love how being chancellor isn't as
It's
courageous and bold a title as mother.
Yes.
Yeah. I was kind of in mixed feelings about that. So one of the things, so she says, Chancellor isn't enough. I need a fiercer title than that.
Right.
And I thought, ooh, okay, this is interesting. This is having moments of resonance with like classical history, because Roman emperors would have the Senate vote them titles. I mean,
Yes.
That's how we got Augustus, for example.
Right.
I mean, originally the guy's name was Octavian. And so what honors would they be given in the form of titles was a very important thing. So the classical history buff in me is going, ooh, what's it going to be? Mother? Oh, come on. You know, I mean, I guess okay, so Klingon mothers are going to be fierce, but, you know, yeah.
And
Kind of fell a little flat for me.
And the whole thing here is that she mentions like it's not generally known that Tyler is Vok. Right. She says she bore Vok's child. She had made Tyler her torchbearer to honor Vok, and that Tyler murdered her son, and betrayed them to the Federation.
Is it not known that he's Vok?
Or did she say that in order to kind of make a distinction that even though it's the same person, through this operation he became a different person?
And I honored what he was by making what he is now my
okay.
Whatever.
That's kind of how I understood it. That
because that really would be suicidally stupid. I'm going to make this human my right hand man out of nowhere.
That's true. That is true.
The first thing you'd want to do is say, by the way, everybody, this is really Vok. It's not what he looks like, but it's really him.
Yes, that's
exactly.
Okay. That makes some sense, I guess. So so we have this moment where they all unite behind her, and L'Rell comes into her own. And meanwhile, aboard this strange...
I did admire her ruthlessness as a leader. I mean, this is a reasonable solution to the problem she'd put herself in. Right.
Especially since, I mean, she was in a no-win situation. She had a Kobayashi Maru moment there, and she found a way out of it. So, and then now aboard this strange starship that's in orbit around a planet, we find that Tyler and the baby are alive with Giorgio. And then she shows him a black comm badge, which he recognizes Section 31. And
How
I'm like,
does he know about Section 31?
Especially since he's a Klingon. Like, he's not like, if he were an actual Starfleet officer, he may have heard rumors of a dark, Black Ops unit. No, there's no reason he would know this, especially if Section 31 is as secretive as they made it out to be in Deep Space Nine. And that's going to be one of the keys here for me with them introducing Section 31. Are they going to be able to keep it as secret as it supposedly is, or are they going to blow it wide open and everyone's going to be talking about it like it's
even
news?
Even if you go back when the Empress was recruited in Section 31, it wasn't revealed like, oh, everybody who's Federation knows about Section 31. It was we're this secretive group where no one really knows about us. We're kind of behind the scenes type of deal.
Yeah.
I can think of two, and this is headcanon again, but I can think of two ways that Ash could have learned about it. Number one, the secret intelligence organizations of one nation are always intensely focused on the secret intelligence organizations of another nation. So the Klingon Empire likely knew about Section 31. And since Vok was involved in intelligence programs for the Klingons, like becoming Ash Tyler, he could have learned about it from Klingon intelligence. Secondly, Lorca was all over dark, evil, weird stuff and came from the Mirror Universe, where they could also have a mirror Section 31.
Yeah.
And he had like that secret torture chamber, whatever place with a Gorn skeleton on Discovery and he was tight with Ash, and so maybe he learned about it from Lorca.
Maybe. Although I gather, I mean, Section 31 was never actually an intelligence agency, but sort of a rogue operation.
But they function. I mean, we're told they're the equivalent of the Tal Shiar and stuff. They're like, I mean, they're kind of, Federation's turning a blind eye to them, but they're functioning like an intelligence agency.
Yeah, I guess that's how they ended up. I mean, that first episode, they really made it sound like they were just a group of rogue Starfleet officers. But be that as it may, where they are is they're over the planet Boreth.
By the way, I like how the way that the thing that leads Ash to ask the question that gets Giorgio to reveal this is, you know, you guys copied our DNA and stuff, and that to make the heads seem real.
Yes.
Ordinary groups can't do that. Who are you? And I liked that they had the presence of mind to say, okay, someone could get these heads and run DNA tests on them. Are they going to stand up? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even though L'Rell sent, threw Ash's head into the pit. Yes.
Mount Doom. Yeah.
So they were in orbit around the planet Boreth in the Klingon Empire, where there's a monastery. The followers of Kahless have a monastery there.
Return.
Where no one goes in or out. And this is where we get the title of the episode, Point of Light, from a line mentioned by Kahless that we get in the
Next Generation
episode, Rightful Heir. He points to a star and says, after promising he would return, look for me there on that point of light. And that's this planet, which is interesting then, because now the baby has been sent to this planet, and he is on this planet.
To be raised as a monk.
So what connection does this have to Kahless then, maybe? That's an interesting question. Are they setting us up for the return of this child at some later point?
I don't think so. I think the title is just a hook into the nature of the place where the baby ends up. That is that point of light, because they can't really bring Kahless back easily in the 23rd century, because his clone return is in the 24th century.
Not Kahless, but the baby. Will the baby come back?
Maybe. Oh, the baby sure could. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I mean, we have seen Klingon children grow very quickly. Alexander, who grew from baby to adult in about 6 years. I mean, maybe Klingons have a different maturation cycle. I mean, that's never been disputed or established. So maybe that baby is going to come back at some point to this point of light, reference. Who knows? But that's because it could also refer to May, and as I think about it, May as that spore was kind of like a point of light. And of course, these signals are also points of light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's not 1,000 of them. This is a Hollywood thing, so we got to be real clear on that.
Yes, it is not an homage to George H.W. Bush. So that's where we end it. Is Tyler joins Section 31. He's recruited by Giorgio, who says, she's with this band of misfits because the freaks are more fun.
I like that line.
It promises that Giorgio is going to continue to be a very interesting character. That's for sure.
I like at the end, she's talking to this other section. Giorgio is talking to this other Section 31 dude who's apparently her superior, maybe.
Yeah.
And says, we want you to work on your recruitment speech. And she says, don't give me notes. He's in. And so that's how we learn Ash accepted her proposal. But the thing I like about that is don't give me notes, because that's a Hollywood in joke. When you have TV series, the script writers, do their initial draft, and then everybody who's above them in the food chain at the studio gives notes on how they need to change the script. And so giving notes is a Hollywood thing. And I like that line of don't give me notes. That's the author's speaking. That's the author of the script speaking there.
So this character that she talks to, his name is Leland, and he's her handler. We met him first in a deleted scene that later showed up online from the season 1 season finale. Will You Take My Hand? Where he recruits, not recruits, but he's supervising or overseeing Giorgio's mission to Kronos then. So he's sort of her recruiter handler in this. And he mentions this Control, who is apparently the leadership of Section 31, whoever they may be. So that's another interesting reference there. We probably going to come back to. So do you either of you have any other notes on this episode that you want to bring up, Corey?
I'm good.
Couple of just kind of production things. First of all, whoever directed this needs to learn that cameras need to be one way, not start one way and then turn it as it's going through a door. I started to get dizzy in some of those episodes where they would have it sideways and then spin as it would come in.
There were a lot of moving Dutch angles in this episode. I think they work in space.
Same guy who did the short trek Calypso, where he did the same thing. Remember that where
yes,
the guy when we first see him in sickbay, he's upside down and they flip it over. Craft, right? Yep. Same thing. Yes. Olatunde Osunsami. Sorry.
So I guess that's his lens
sounds good
flare.
to me.
Yeah.
But I think it works in space where you're seeing the ships from these weird, bizarre angles because that communicates the 3D-ness of our environment.
Well,
but not interiors.
Last episode where they're going, they go from the ship down to the planet. They show from the ship down to the planet or something like that, and the ship's upside down as we normally see it.
Right.
You know, and that's one thing. But yeah, where you're inside and you see the door sideways and then it spins as it goes into the door. That got me a little dizzy there sometimes. One thing they do here that they do so often in Star Trek, why are you talking about a private issue you want no one to hear about in the middle of the open corridor where anybody could walk by at any time?
Which one was that?
That was when Amanda first is talking to Hans
right.
Michael Burnham, the card, the disc. Why are you doing that in the middle of an open corridor instead of in her private corridors?
Right.
When L'Rell is talking to the whole Klingon, all the families, it switches from her speaking Klingon with English subtitles to her speaking English with Klingon subtitles.
Yeah.
So is this the point now where we're going to have auto translate of the Klingons? Now we're always going to hear them in English.
I kind of hope so.
I hope so. I hate the way with those mouthpieces and stuff, it's painful to listen to them speak Klingon.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
So hopefully now we're going to have it where it's going to be in English with maybe Klingon subtitles or no subtitles at all. And then when Ash and L'Rell are, they're being recommitted before they go get the baby, they bring up Kailash and Lucara, the love between Kailash and Lucara.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, is, Klingon tradition. Yep. And then the final one is the scene where Ash is standing on the bridge of the Section 31 ship with the baby. When he's not looking, the look on Giorgio's face, she's just got this soft look. But as soon as he turns, she immediately gets that stern look. I love that. That was just great acting.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah,
showing even she has a maternal side.
Yep,
even she does. Cool. All right, so I think that takes us to the end of this discussion. We didn't have any feedback last week, folks. But if you have some feedback, we'd love to get it from you. And we'll take it at. You can send it to go to sqpn.com/trek or the SQPN Facebook page and leave us feedback on the episode links there, or you can send an email to trek@sqpn.com or on Twitter or any of those places. So we'd love to get your feedback on our discussions, anything you found interesting, insights that you've had that we missed, that sort of thing. Before we wrap up, though, I do want to take a moment, like we always do, to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Star Trek. Today, we want to thank by name Sean F., Christopher Y., Joel K., Jimmy D., and Lars S. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows we do at sqpn.com. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. You can find links to relevant to our discussion on our show notes at sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next episode, which is titled "An O-Ball for Sharon." Your guess is as good as mine what any of that means.
Minor spoiler, an O-Ball is a coin that you would put either in the mouth or on the eyes of a dead person so that they could pay Charon, the ferryman, to cross the river Styx into the afterlife.
The Greek mythology. Okay, I knew who Charon is. Did not know about the Obol. Thank you, Jimmy. So you'll have that and more insights next time. So until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
I'm glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, on Vulcan, we call bossiness persistence.